Hi guys, welcome back to Infinite Possibilities, the podcast where we explore the lives of amazing people, their choices, challenges and opportunities. And today I have a very special guest, Victor Callan.
Hello, hi, how are you? Good.
Hi Victor, thanks so much for being here.
Great, thank you.
Yeah, so Victor, he was one of my professors in leadership at UQ. And then we want to take a step back, see how he got to where he is. But first, what's your 1-minute introduction about what you do?
So hi everyone, I'm Victor Callan. I'm a professor at the University of Queensland in the business school. And I've had a variety of roles here at the University of Queensland, including being a young lecturer, senior lecturer, associate professor in those days in the School of Psychology. And then some time back I moved across to the business school, and where I've become professor. I've been dean and head of school, dean of research, director of research, and now I have returned to the normal bread and butter role of being a professor who teaches into the MBA program. And also Karen and I met within the Leadership and Strategy Practicum course last year, semester 2, and she was one of my wonderful students in that class. It was a real fun class.
Yeah.
Good group. Yeah.
Good memories. Yeah, so Victor has been a lot in academia, so we want to see, Victor, like what kind of child were you like growing up?
I was a typical Australian boy in those days, growing up in the 1950s and the 1960s. One of 3 children. I was the eldest boy. I've got a brother who's a year younger and a sister who's 2 years younger. And so it was a typical, very much outdoory type of living in those days, where kids did anything they would like. They'd hop on a bike and go for a walk and climb mountains and go down on the beach, and we just did anything we liked, and you felt safe and secure. But especially on bikes, we would just bike everywhere, and we had a local mountain nearby that we go up and climb and discover caves, and and the beach was a big part of my life as well. Still is, going down the beach and swimming and surfing and being part of that. A childhood at primary school and secondary school down in a place called Wollongong, which is south of Sydney, about an hour south of Sydney, which is well known as a coal mining industrial. BHP used to be there as well, still is. But also, more than that, it's right on the coast, and you've got beautiful beaches and fishing and surfing and beautiful sunshine, and it was a nice place to grow up.
Yeah, that's cool. And so what kind of hobbies did you have while growing up?
Football was a big part of my life,
cool.
and I'm very pleased about the outcome the other night with the rugby league with Queensland and New South Wales. So I played rugby league from the age of about 5, from what I remember, like a very, very little boy.
Yeah.
And there was not the range of sports that you have these days, like AFL and soccer and so on. But played rugby league from about the age of 5 onwards, and then all through primary school. Then when I went to secondary school, high school, we moved to rugby union, which is a similar but different game, but I won't go into the differences between the two. And I played rugby union and rugby league, both really. Sometimes I'd play one game in the morning, rugby league, and rugby union in the afternoon for the school. So that was very much the winter sports, and I played representative football for my school and for the Illawarra region and for the state. So I was quite a reasonable player, much bigger man than I am now. Young men can be quite large. And the other part was summer was very much surfing and having surfboards and enjoying being a surfer. So that was life. Very much I very much loved the outdoors. Still do.
That's cool. And were you an avid reader when you were younger?
Not really, no.
Surprise.
No. There have been some studies recently saying that men don't like to read, and compared to women love to read, and they love to read fiction. I read a little, and it's mostly non-fiction, maybe historical. I've just finished a book on Australian explorers mostly. So Captain Cook, because it's been his anniversary of Cook didn't discover Australia, but Cook, Australia had already been discovered long before Cook came. But Cook, and then Joseph Banks, the Banksia, the wattle.
Yeah.
And Banks came with Cook, and he was really the botanist. And really it's about very rich men who had time on their hands, and really they became citizen scientists. They actually last night I was listening to something about Egypt and pharaohs and Tutankhamun, and really the same thing there. It was really very wealthy British men who had money, time on their hands, and went off and really discovered ancient treasures like Tutankhamun. And really Banks was another example. Joseph Banks hopped on a boat, funded it mostly, funded most of Captain Cook's trip, and came out and discovered all those wonderful plants and animals that are a big part of Australia today.
Yeah, that's pretty cool. And I think it makes sense because like once your like lower pyramid of needs are satisfied, you have the time to just for fun, just for creativity.
But it's interesting too in that I say I don't read, but I read every day. So and so I'm reading, like today I've read lots of documents, and I write, so I write books and I've written articles, and I guess I'm reading and writing all the time. But I remember I had a very close friend, still a very close friend of mine, and we'd be sitting on planes together, travelling interstate or overseas to do consultancy work for companies. And I'd typically be marking a PhD student's work, and I'd be sighing and moaning and groaning and scribbling all over it. And you get very, very much into the document. When you really read that type of work, it's quite emotionally and intellectually quite exhausting and engaging. It's wonderful to do. But I'd sigh and moan and groan and make comments, and I still do when I read a document. So I say I don't read, but it's because I think you get so exhausted reading that type of material, which can be very dry and very technical, that the fun of reading in a way has been taken away. I'll read a newspaper. But it's interesting as a lesson learned there about probably keeping a balance, that you still have fun things to read. And I don't think I've done that very well. I try to do it with the non-fiction work, the historical work, but I'm looking for grammatical errors. I'm looking for typos. I'm looking for the way the text rolls, and really, even newspaper articles I do the same thing.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think we all end up in careers sometimes where certain things you have to trade off.
Yeah.
But I'd encourage everyone to keep their fun of reading, keep reading, because you learn so much. It's just wonderful.
Yeah, that's so true. It's the same with people who like produce movies, right? Now when they sit down and enjoy like a film with like their family, all they can see is just like, how did they set up the lighting?
And many actors never see a completed film. They say they complete their part, they've done their role, they've done their week or two of filming, and then they go off set.
Yeah.
And many of them never want to sit down and watch the completed piece of work.
Yeah.
Because they've done their role, because it becomes, I don't know, because they don't often like seeing themselves act.
Yeah,
maybe this is not completely true, but that's what they say. They say
I don't really like watching myself back.
Yeah, well, I think it's the same,
Yeah, that's cool. But as a child, you weren't particularly into reading, so it wasn't like it spoiled it for you.
No, it was very much outdoor living, and but also I did well at school. I did well at primary school and high school, and I was very studious, and you learn to get into that pattern of locking yourself away and looking out the window at what you'd probably rather be doing.
Yeah.
But you had an assignment due or a project due, and we had a very studious house. And my sister and my brother, my sister in particular, studied very hard, and she became she did medicine in the end, and is still a practitioner. My brother became a high school teacher, but he was always, worse than I was. He always wanted to get outside. He was not extremely studious, but he did very well. He became a high school teacher. So we had, a studious house, and that makes all the difference. And Mum and Dad cared about study as well.
I think it's the parents' influence.
Well, especially, if your parents have had not the opportunities that you've had as well.
Yeah, they put all their hopes on their kids.
They do,
sometimes.
and they do that with all of us. I sit here and I've got 2 grown-up daughters now, but you still worry about them, and you're still concerned about them, and mums and dads are like that.
Yeah, sounds good. And so when, career paths came up in the household, what was the discussion like in the early days?
It was interesting. I think parents in those days, and again we're talking about the 50s and 60s, I think it still applies, but maybe less so now, were fairly conservative in what they expected their children to do. Be safe bet, being a teacher was a safe bet, or getting a job in the public sector. And I know I do a lot of work in Indonesia still, where it's very prestigious to get a job in the public sector,
locked in for life.
Locked in for life. You've got a regular salary. There's promotion guaranteed through a certain particular path, and they recognise qualifications, especially educational qualifications. as against being the entrepreneur and starting your own
zero
business.
or nothing.
So these days it's different, but in those days it was conservative career choices. And for me, I guess I went to university thinking I was going to be a school teacher, because I liked teaching and I liked instruction, and I really started off with the ambition of being a school teacher, but that changed once I got to uni.
Yeah, that's interesting. Oh, okay. So what kind of changed? Because you ended up studying a Bachelor of
I
Arts
had a Bachelor of Arts
Psychology.
honours in psychology. So
Yeah.
again, a lesson learned there, and again, that's why the Americans structure their degrees differently from what we do. They often have that very general first year.
Yeah.
So I was lucky I did a Bachelor of Arts, and it still applies today. A Bachelor of Arts, maybe a bit like a Bachelor of Business degree does still apply.
Yeah.
Is it very much a general degree where you really explore a whole range of subjects? So I did a Bachelor of Arts in first year, and I did English and history and geography and psychology. And I knew nothing about psychology, but I did psychology. I loved it, absolutely loved it.
Oh.
So what happened was that after the first year, I got quite excited about psychology, enjoyed the lecturers and enjoyed the content that we were reading in psychology. And then in those days, and it still applies, this was the University of New South Wales, you had to pick honours from your second year.
Oh, okay.
And in a BA, that's unusual. Normally you do honours just in fourth year. And I know you've done in your BABS degree,
Yeah.
you really, in a way, were doing honours structured within the 4 years.
Yeah.
Because most degrees, as we all know, are like 3 years. So I started doing psychology, and then psychology honours from year 2, year 3, and then year 4 I did the honours degree. But I kept the history and geography going, so I got a double major in geography and history. Again, probably being fairly conservative. I had something to fall back on if I didn't
Yeah.
get a job in
Yeah,
psychology. I
that's
got a job in being a history or geography teacher.
Yeah.
And then did honours in psychology and did very well. And got first class honours.
Wow, very, very impressive.
And then that opened the door to scholarships at a number of universities, at least 3 or 4 I could have gone to. And I went to the Australian National University in Canberra.
Yeah.
And it had many advantages. It was a 3-year PhD. I got into the PhD program.
Oh, that's quite a short PhD, no?
Yeah, it was 3 years in those days, was what you would expect to do. And now it's 4 years. Most people expect a PhD to be done in 4 years. And
Yeah.
my PhD students, and even university scholarships are usually 4 years these days.
Yeah.
So over the undergraduate degree, doing psychology from second year, third year, fourth year, I got a passion for research, reading and that technical writing required. Had a lot of good teachers, and I think teachers make a big difference. If you've got
100%.
really exciting teachers and really a bit weird teachers, they were kind of
Yeah, quirky,
crazy and
memorable.
quirky and memorable. Yeah, funny, doing funny things, jumping off platforms and making jokes and making
that's
class a
kinda
lot of
cool.
fun.
Yeah, I swear I didn't get much at UQ.
Didn't you get much? We're not very
Victor,
funny.
you didn't jump off any platform,
No, I didn't. Hopefully we laughed a little bit, but probably,
Yeah,
It was interesting doing it in hybrid mode because for those who don't, we had technology with Zooming and we had
and they were the early,
face to face. But classes were good. I think people were pretty good. We had about 70% there and the rest online. So in those days, I had quirky teachers and they kind of got me interested in that, and then got the honours degree. Went to ANU, and it had attractions which I didn't really appreciate in going there, in that it's very much a postgraduate university. ANU is, as you know, it's in the top 50 in the world.
Yeah.
It's highly ranked for postgraduate study, and if you walk on the campus at UQ and most Australian universities, let me exaggerate, 80% of students are undergraduate, 20% are postgraduate. You go to ANU, 80% are postgraduate and 20% are undergraduate. It's got a very small undergraduate group, but a very large international and national audience of people doing master's degrees and PhDs. And then you've got a lot of research schools, which are full-time researchers, which in those days most Australian universities didn't have, but ANU got special funding from the government so they could kind of do that. And so you had this really wonderful environment, which was quite inspiring, with really world-class researchers and research centres. And it was a place where even as a young man or young woman, you could actually walk across and knock on the door of another discipline. Like I talked a lot to people in sociology and demography, let alone psychology. And you sort of had all sorts of interesting people to talk to and different seminars to go to. So and I think, I don't know ANU now, but I think it was very much like that at that time, because it wasn't a big place. It might have had 20,000 students,
Yeah.
of which 15,000 were postgrads. So it was a good place. It was a good choice. It was a good place to go to. And in the end, it had all the other advantages of being in the world's top 50, being very prestigious.
Yeah.
And when you got a PhD from ANU, and again, I've had it now for a long time,
Yeah.
it's never been a disadvantage.
Yeah.
So if you go to the right universities, and again, maybe this is something about careers, you know, you can debate this, but I think if you go to certain universities, it's a tag
Yeah, 100%.
which carries you through. And again, I think UQ is one of those in the top 50,
Yeah.
UNSW, Sydney, and again, I could name
Yeah.
others. And I think that really helps. And I know I've had nephews that have gone to other universities and got
Yeah.
their degrees, and then in the end had to go to get master's degrees at like a top 50, top 100 university.
Yeah, and then suddenly they're more
to have the
attractive.
brand, and they're more attractive for jobs.
Yeah, 100%.
So yeah, but yeah, so I had a good time with the PhD in those days. For those who do PhDs today, it's a lot better organised. You've got 2 supervisors. You've got like a backup supervisor.
Yeah.
You have a primary and a secondary supervisor. It's more regimented about extra courses. There's more deadlines around, we call them milestones at the end of year 1, year 2, year 3. So it's like people are more likely watching over you and helping you work through the program, and you actually have additional skills and knowledge you pick up along the way through courses. In those days, it was like you enroll on day 1 and 3 years later you submit your PhD. And so it didn't have that, and he only had 1 supervisor. So in my cohort of 10, only 2 of us finished the PhD out of that group of 10. And the others went off and never finished, or had problems with their supervisor, or couldn't get the data they needed.
Oh, that's pretty tragic.
It was pretty tragic. Yeah, some really, really nice people just didn't fit. But they went off into other careers. But yeah. So ANU is a great place, and you know, going to a top 50 university was really wonderful. Yeah.
Yeah, that's cool. And how was the PhD process? I have a couple of friends doing
Yeah.
now. It's kind of
Well,
like a hate-love relationship.
Yeah, it still
Very
is, I
cyclical.
think. Yeah.
Yeah.
Like I've got, I'm currently writing up some papers with one of my PhD students, Ree Jordan.
Yeah,
And
shout out.
and Ree's an Indigenous woman, and she's got a PhD with me, and I was the second supervisor, what you call the associate with Ree, with Professor Terry Fitzsimmons was the first supervisor, and she did a project on mavericks. And mavericks are people that challenge the way organisations operate. You know, they're often entrepreneurs, they're often innovators, but they take risks. And we're trying to understand who are mavericks and why do they do what they do. So look, she did her PhD like others, and it was very well structured. Milestone 1, milestone 2, milestone 3. Milestone 1 is really at the end of first year. You describe, well, what are you going to do and why? Literature review, research questions. You put forward a plan about what the studies will be. And then really in studies, years 2, years 3, you're collecting the data, whether it be qualitative or quantitative. In your fields, more accounting and finance, people often use secondary databases and clean them
100%.
up and play with them and have got weird, wonderful ideas they want to do. Often very technical PhDs in those fields.
Yeah.
While in my fields, it's more conceptually driven, and then we have the technical tools as well. And then really then by the time you're ready to submit, you've got a very good draft which has been workshopped. You've had additional courses to help you develop the idea, and there's like a risk management. So by the time we have students at the end of 3.5 years or 4 years ready to submit, we know that's going to, through our internal processes, through all the additional courses we've done with them and the additional supports and I guess the mentoring, we've got a 99% chance that thesis will be okay. While in the old days, you know, you had one supervisor, I met with my supervisor 3 or 4 times over 3 years. He was never really around, he didn't really care.
Yeah.
And that sort of behaviour would never happen now. So really, PhD is a wonderful option. It's still a great career choice. It opens a lot of doors, and the risks are minimal these days. If you're really well motivated and you've got some good ideas and you work really hard, then the system actually does support you a lot more now in being successful in completing it. The big question with a PhD is, does it really make a big difference for you? You know, like in some fields, I don't think opens many doors. You know, I think once you've got it, you've got it. You've got
Yeah.
like the degree. You've
Yeah.
got the PhD. You're now a doctor.
Yeah, must love
And
it,
that's
Dr.
lovely.
Callan.
It's wonderful. It's nice. It's nice to get it, but then no one can take that away from you. But
Yeah.
you know, does that really make a big difference for you if you're in accounting or finance or law or
Yeah,
in
does it?
actually getting in that? And then it's debatable. You know, I think in definitely to be an academic you need the PhD because you
Yeah.
won't become a professor in the longer term, and not many people will actually become professor unless you've got the PhD and you do the research. But you know, if you're working in accounting or law or economics or whatever, there are examples. You see it. You know, people have got a PhD in economics. They're on the news all the time,
Yeah.
and they're working for consulting companies. But and the public sector does appreciate PhDs. But we're having, and all universities in Australia, and I think nationwide, internationally, I think as well, are having challenges attracting people to a PhD program.
Yeah, no,
You know, it doesn't make a difference. And will it really help me with my career and my I guess income as well.
Yeah.
It's
interesting.
international students still love the PhD. They want to do it.
Yeah, when they go back home, it's
Yeah,
like
it's a big.
nice
It
place.
opens many doors. I think so.
Yeah, and I'm kind of curious because you said back in the old days, at
Not the
at
old
a
days.
oh no old days.
Yeah, it's the olden days. I know what you
My
mean.
bad.
Yeah.
Yeah, you said that in your cohort, like 2 out of 10 finished, and just wondering for now, like, what's like since you guys have like a very well kind of regimented, kind of structured, is the like completion rate a lot higher?
It's much higher. I couldn't give you the exact figure, but it's really all universities now have got a duty of care that enroll in
love it.
It's a big investment too.
It
It's
is.
like I help with an international program for Indonesian students who come to Australia to do a PhD, and the investment there is I don't know. Let me guess, it's $60,000 or $70,000 a year in fees. Then you've got living allowances, so you're really putting $500,000 to $1 million into growing a PhD student. So, and then the UQ offers scholarships, Australian Government, Australian Postgraduate Awards, APA Awards are scholarship programs. So you're looking at $500,000 to $1 million investment. So you want to make sure people finish. So the numbers are high. At least 80% would be finishing. And where it drags on is something happens where, other things in life, because often they're not, PhD students usually are not young, they're people in their 30s or 40s, often a lot in their 30s. They've got children, they've got other commitments, got work. Many of them are doing it part-time, some will come in, many will do it full-time. Internationals have to do it full-time.
Yeah.
And so things go wrong.
Yeah.
But ultimately
100%.
many of them still get there.
Yeah, that's cool. And what's your recommendation? Some people, they do their honours, they go into industry for like, I don't know, a couple of years and then do their PhD, or should you go from honours straight to PhD, and like what are the sort of pros and cons of each?
I think it varies. Look, I'd say I've supervised, I don't know, over 40 or 50 PhDs.
Yeah.
I think nearly all of them, at least in the last 30 years, have been exactly what you described. They've done industry for 5 or 10 or 15 years. Like, I'm sick of the last 7 or 8 that I've supervised have all been out there as working in industry as consultants or trainers or senior managers, and then they've decided to come and do their PhD usually full-time on a scholarship.
Wow, that's
and
quite a big
in their 30s
risk.
and 40s. Yeah, it's a big risk. Really to have a career change, and then to, like, my two current PhDs are exactly like that. There are people in their 30s, one's probably, she's in her 40s, and they've made that decision to do their PhD. So,
Why is that? Is that because now they want to work in academia, or they want to bring something back to their original field?
It's both, I think, sometimes. Sometimes they want to stay in their current field and they just need a PhD. They feel a PhD will give them an edge. Like one I'm thinking of right now, she wants to, I think, do the PhD. I asked her the other day, why are you doing this?
Yeah.
And she said, well, she thinks it'll give her more of an advantage when she does consultancy work and she applies for work. And others, it's a change of career. They get a PhD, and a number of people walking around this building did their PhD with me and now here as lecturers, senior lecturers, associate profs. So or at other universities. So the PhD is still a pathway mostly into academic life, but to me, it can also be a pathway, especially into consultancy work,
That's quite interesting.
which I think's really quite interesting. And again, I've done a lot of consultancy along the way. Yeah.
Yeah, that's cool. Keen to explore that a bit more. But first, so just to clarify that your bachelor's was at UQ, was it?
No, UNSW, University of New South Wales. So BA Honours, University of New South Wales.
And then ANU for...
Yeah, so I did 18, 19, 20, 21, did the BA Honours, and then 22, 23, 24, did the PhD, and then I was offered a job here at UQ.
Oh, okay.
Second round, they actually, I think, they had advertised. I applied. I got on what we would call these days the long short list. And you have a short list, and they interviewed the short list. And again, I never really understood the full story. Never did I ask, but I think they offered the job to someone from the United Kingdom. He got a little bit particular about salary or movement or coming or not coming, and in the end turned the job down. So they went back to the long short list, of which I was on with 3 other people.
Oh, only 3 other people.
Yeah, and then they flew us in December and interviewed us, and they offered me the job before I hopped in the taxi to go back to the airport. So it went really, really well.
Wow, right on the spot.
On the spot.
Wow, and why do you think you were
Oh, it went
successful?
really well. It went well. It went well. I gave a good seminar, good job interview. They liked the resume. They liked that I'd won a fellowship as well to the University of Hawaii. It's actually a centre there called the East-West Centre. So it's funded by US Congress, still is there. It's quite prestigious, and it's the East meets the West, and it's a cross-cultural learning institute. And my PhD thesis had been aspects of culture.
Yeah.
And having that East-West Centre postdoctoral award.
Yeah.
A PhD from ANU, UNSW, BA Honours. Didn't I have publications? No, I had no publications. So it's but finishing the PhD off, it was a good fit for a lectureship in psychology at UQ in social and cross-cultural psychology, and that's where I started.
That's pretty cool. Yeah, and just had a random question. So, do you think that generally most PhD students are just introverts? Is that generally the case?
I think a lot of people who do research, whether it be are introverted because you're sitting in a room,
just by yourself doing your
playing
thing.
with data or with ideas. We had a meeting this morning. I won't go into all the details, but we had a number of academics doing a workshop from 9 to 1 today, talking about redesigning a course. And one of the younger ladies there, who's she's a postdoctoral, full-time PhD. Sorry, she got a PhD, but she's a full-time research fellow. Used the analogy that she feels like she's a brain in a bottle. Strange analogy.
That's pretty hilarious.
But she was getting at the idea that she would, I don't know, she's a bit tired. She's also having a lot of fun. Really was saying, well, that's what she does. She's a brain in a bottle, and she just sits in a room all day and works on these ideas. And a lot of them are quite introverted. Yeah. But I think you go into other organisations, and like if you walk down the corridor here, it's a Friday afternoon. Yeah. Lots of doors are closed. Sometimes people are behind those doors. Other times they're working at home, but they lock themselves away. But if you go into the public sector, you go in the private sector, it's the same thing. A lot of people. Yeah, they're behind doors or in cubicles getting their work done. Yeah.
So in that case, in your opinion, how much do social skills matter in this sort of academia, PhD field?
A lot. Still a lot. You've got to be a genuine human being. You've got to actually, especially with a PhD, you've got to still learn to be a communicator, and you're doing research, and you're doing, research and teaching. I'm what I call a TNR, teaching and research professor, and so it's always been a part of my life that I've but it's been part of I've taught as well as done research. Although when I've been heads of school and deans, and I haven't really done a lot of teaching. But even then, I've done executive education with audiences in their 30s, 40s, and 50s over 4 or 5 days, and that requires particular skills around managing people and delivering at the highest level. So all those interpersonal skills are critical. Yeah.
And if you had
if you're introverted,
and if you had to sort of put a percentage breakdown in terms of would you say like, to be like a good professor or like PhD candidate, like 80% is the quality of the work, 20% is kind of, is the way, because the place I'm coming from is like, I had a friend and she was like applying for PhD, and then I was like trying to like up her interview skills, and she's like, no, Karen, it's like fine, it's not that valued, it's not like a business interview. And then she was saying that like how, because you know, she had a very like, in terms of like her previous honours project, had a very like strong kind of, and she's like, this work will like sort of speak for me, and then we were like debating about it, and she's like, that's why I'm in this field, because yeah.
Yeah, no, you still like you know you might be doing research, but then you've got to communicate what you do. And okay, we communicate it through journal articles and through, but also through conference presentations. So you're in the conference presenting it in forums, through workshops, and these days even more so than ever before through the media. You know, I'm doing this with you in a way as a form of communication, although we're not talking per se about the actual research I do. But I've just written an article for like an MBA newsletter, a website that's just gone out, and thousands of people have seen that. We're currently writing on an article for The Conversation, which for those who don't know is like like a newspaper that publishes research but in a plain speaking way, as though you're talking to a friend about the research you do, and we're writing an article for The Conversation right now. And I'm writing a report right now on COVID and the impact of COVID on 18 different industries. And again, that report, which is quite long, it's a 150-page report, but that's going to be cut down to workshops, to social media, to presentations. One of our team just presented last night to KPMG.
Oh, very cool.
To a very senior audience at KPMG of industry people about some of the work we're doing on gender equity. So yeah, a lot of members of my team, especially the younger ones, are out there doing it all the time. Yeah.
Oh, that's pretty cool.
But so it's just not, and KPMG, I'm sure all the consulting companies do it. They're always out workshopping. They're at CEDA, they're at forums, they're getting people on the stage, and you know, say, okay, you present, and then people come up to you later on and say, well, that was wonderful, tell me more about it, and then you build those relationships. So academics are being also encouraged just not to present at the academic forums, to present at the industry forums as well.
Yeah, that's pretty good.
And I do a lot of executive education programs, and the same thing there. I'm communicating in a quasi-academic way what I do, the research I do, the research that other people do, and we're applying it to their business context. And again, that builds relationships, and not quite often people come back and say, okay, can you come and talk to my organisation more about this, or can we do these projects? So a lot of my work is with industry. Yeah,
that's cool. And I want to take a quick step back.
Yeah, sure.
So in terms of like, you know, being offered a position here to like teach at UQ, like when did you sort of become certain that like maybe you wanted to be a lecturer, and you know, how does one sort of, I guess, like find their passion, career path?
Look, I think a lot of careers, and others will know this, is kind of your plan, but also accidental things happen that are quite exciting sometimes. So you know, you do your job, and you find some part of your job that you really like doing. And if all goes to plan, maybe you can do more of that part that you really like to do. But we also do lots of things that we don't like to do, and it's all part of doing the job. So look, I think if you've got employers, again, they've got things that need to be, they need to be achieved, and certain, pay needs to be rewarded around particular tasks that must be done, and quite often that's a range of enjoyable and less enjoyable tasks. And I think you just got to suck that up and do that initially, but over time you develop a brand, you develop a reputation for doing something in particular probably better than what other people can do. And so I'd be encouraging, we did talk about this last year in the course that I had with you, where you need to develop a brand image. Like if people mention your name and someone says Karen or Victor, what do they think of? If they think of a particular skill set or a particular personality or a particular set of achievements or a certain confidence that you can do that job, then you develop a brand. Now that can be great, because then you are channeled down into that particular work that you like to do. but you've got to manage that. Sometimes that just becomes so specialised that you
Yeah.
say, "Oh, I want to go back and do other things. You know,
Yeah.
I want to broaden my brand." Well, you can do that. I'm sure you can do that. But yeah, so you need to think about what that brand. And I see it here all the time. People
Yeah.
develop a brand around excellence in their teaching or a particular research area they work in, or their administrative skills, or their work with industry.
Yeah.
And some people try to do it all, and I think I try to do it all, and other people just develop a good skill as a teacher or a researcher, and they narrow it down to a particular set of skills. Yeah.
That's cool. And so what kind of is your brand when people say Victor Callan?
I think I've had debates about this, but
Yeah.
I'm what I call I'm an applied researcher. There's an ugly phrase called pracademic, which a pracademic is a practitioner and an academic. So
Yeah.
I like to do work that is linked to some sort of event or phenomenon or issue that is occurring within industry. Like we
Yeah.
talked about wicked problems
Yeah.
in our course, and so complex, difficult, challenging issues that require, I guess, academic research, but then that work needs to then be communicated at a policy level or in practice. So a lot of the work I do, we've just done reports in the last 3 or 4 years for Australian Institute of Company Directors, the AICD, a very large report on gender equity. We did another big government report for WGEA, Workplace Gender Equality Agency, again on women and careers and career paths. And the one we're doing right now is on COVID and the impact of COVID on a number of industries.
Yeah.
And I did another one end of last year for the Department of Industry on how companies are skilling their staff. It wasn't really about COVID, but COVID became part of it, and the ways in which they're using formal and informal training. So, you will do, you might do a graduate certificate in something, or in this case, people might do a vocational education and training program, certificate 1, 2, 3 or 4 in a particular field. And there might be, we did IT, warehousing, agriculture, and we looked at how they train in those industries. And really they're using a mixture of in-house training, specialists and experts who come in and deliver, but that training is not accredited, and quite often they also do accredited training. Google and Microsoft are out there training all the time. And they're more likely to be training people in information technology and often accounting these days much more than the universities are. So those sort of industries are, I guess, spreading the number of sources that they use to do their training. So I do these reports quite a lot for government.
Yeah, that's cool. And how did you become a pracademic? I
Yeah.
remember in your introduction to our class, you talked a lot about consulting
Yeah,
and all the
that's
random
right.
industries that you did. And
Yeah,
then
yes.
not random.
No,
there was just a lot. It was just like, oh wow. Flip to the next PowerPoint. So I was like, wow, he's done
Yeah.
a lot. And I was so surprised because that's not kind of my initial
No, it's
impression
not
of
what people do.
academia.
No.
Yeah, so how was it, and is it because of your industry?
Yeah,
focus?
it's been great, and it's kept me, I've been at UQ a long time
Yeah.
as an academic, and the reason I've been here is that really it's given me, I nearly left after about the first 10 years
That's
when I was
cool.
in psychology, and I got to associate prof, and I did the standard
Yeah.
thing of first year teaching. I love teaching big classes.
Yeah.
And then teaching, then publishing in all the right journals, internet,
Yeah,
and I've
love it.
written half a dozen books and did all that in the first 7 or 8 years. And I thought, oh. And then what happened was I was approached to do some work for one of the consulting companies on a large review they were doing of one of the big public hospitals. And I had some certain technical skills around survey design and research methodology.
Ooh, cool stuff.
And so they got me, and then I ended up doing another thing for Channel 7, looking at
Wow.
So I was starting to, and the referrals started coming in, and then I said, oh, okay, I'm in a school of psychology which doesn't really appreciate people doing this type of applied industry work, because it was all about doing work using undergraduate students as your subjects and doing experimental designs and manipulating control variables, experimental. I don't know if you look at psychological studies, but that's what a lot of it is, and it's all very theoretically driven. And I'd done all that.
Sick of it.
And I said, well, I need to move. And I was offered jobs at some of the consulting companies, and I was also said, oh, a job's just come up in the business school.
Very cool.
And so I just really went from one building to another. And that made the move from one place where consultancy was not well regarded in a school of psychology. But look, the psychology school at UQ is amongst the best in the world. So they do that. What they do really, really well. And then I moved to a business school, which then was called the Graduate School of Management, and where it was more accepted to actually do that type of work, to do the academic work, but also to do work which then had more of an application, often for government, but also for industry. And so I just kept then doing the consultancy work as well. So, so I've done that through a lot of grants that we've won. Yeah. So there's a number of grant schemes called the Australian Research Council linkage grants, where companies put their money in, universities put their in-kind support, which is our time doing the work. And then we've done lots of projects with BHP, Rio Tinto,
so is it kind of like
Brisbane City Council.
almost like volunteering, kind of pro bono?
In a way, it's like the universities are saying, if industry puts in the cash, we will give you the in-kind support. So the in-kind support is Victor Callan working one day a week, or his team 1 day a week on this project. And this project might be with BHP Billiton looking at the relationship between mining communities and the mines, which is one of these ARC projects. And look, BHP want to get value out of that. And they were putting in hundreds of thousands of dollars for that, with Rio Tinto and Newmont Mines also doing the same thing. And then really out of that, they got an understanding of what were the dynamics to help them improve relationships between mining communities or mining towns and the mine operators, because often relationships can go wrong. And it's all about all the environmental issues and trucking issues and employment issues. And now it's
the wicked problems.
Oh, right. Now with FIFO, fly in, fly out, it's even. Well, in a way, the mines have said, well, no, we'll just fly our people in. We don't even put them up in the community, in the local communities anymore, which has been another outcome. But yeah, doing a lot of applied research has really kept me excited about the work I do. And then you can talk about that work, as I've done in our course, in the classes, because I teach a lot of MBA classes in executive education. And I've got a particular audience there, which is usually people that are fairly, in our class with you, they were people in their last semester.
100%.
About to go out and get jobs. A lot of them were going to go into consultancy work, and therefore I could make that connection. While with the MBAs, who are on average 36 years of age, they've got 12 years of industry experience, they've got 6 years of management experience. You can talk about your research and your consultancy, and they appreciate those insights. While, if I spoke to a first-year psychology class, they'd probably say, it's not what we want. It's not theoretical enough. But, theory's still a big part of what we do.
Yeah, that's pretty cool. Also, I had a question about, what is it like climbing the sort of academia hierarchy? Because I know that, in consulting, it's generally consultant 2 years to senior con, and then probably 3 years into manager, and then associate director, and then case by case basis into partner and whatever. So what's it like?
It's somewhat similar in a way.
So when you come in, are you just called professor?
Come in as lecturer.
Lecturer.
Come in as usually with a PhD or still finishing a PhD. But these days, because the market's so competitive. People have got a PhD and they come in as a lecturer, and they could be of any age. We have people coming in their 50s and people coming in their late 20s is unusual, but they're more in their 30s. They've done other things maybe. And then there are very clear expectations around teaching and teaching courses, supervising PhDs, getting a research project up and running or research program. Working with other people, developing research teams, applying for grants, and then with the teaching going well and research going well and research teams and PhD students and publications in national or international journals and your work being picked up and being cited, you might go from lecturer to senior lecturer.
So is that roughly 2 years or something?
Could be. 2 years would be quick. It's more it could be 3 to 5 years.
Wow. Okay.
And then senior lecturer, associate professor could be another 5 to 10 years,
my
or some people
gosh.
never go beyond senior lecturer.
Yeah.
Senior lecturer is seen as the career grade, like that's the norm.
Yeah.
A lot of people stop at, they stay senior lecturer for 30 years.
Oh, wow.
And then the associate prof is a bit of more of a translation, without boring people, but it's more, you keep doing what you're doing around teaching and research and working, but now much more than maybe 20 years ago. It's all about developing leadership skills. So you actually are leading a program, you're leading some sort of industry project, you're actually doing something where you are responsible for some sort of industry alliance or some sort of industry alliance or a collaborative relationship, or you're doing something quite around leading a team or leading a group within, and you might get to associate prof. And then senior professors, some people never get beyond that level.
Yeah.
And some people go, I think it's 5% go on to being full professor.
Oh.
And that's
wow.
because just things work out with research and teaching in my case, I think it was a combination of the teaching, the publications, work with industry,
Yeah.
and that they saw me as a good fit for leadership roles in the future. Yeah.
Yeah, that's pretty cool. Now we all want to know how long did it take you to climb from lecturer to senior lecturer?
9 years to go from lecturer to professor.
Oh.
So I had a fairly quick move. Started at 25. By the time I was 34, 35, I was full professor, which is unusual. Yeah, yeah. But you can look at it positively in that I got professorship quickly, and then therefore I could go on and do other things. So I became a head of school.
Yeah.
And these are things that you probably, some people do them and then, it's like they do managerial roles or leadership roles and it takes away from other things and therefore the research career stops.
Yeah.
So I've always tried to keep the balance, which means you go into lack of balance where you keep the research program going while you're doing these other things. So
lack of sleep.
Yeah, no, it's interesting. So so I think it can. But look, I think it was great to get that level at a young age, because I think it opened lots of other doors to being head of school and discipline leader and so on. While a lot of other people then end up doing those roles to actually get to that next level, or they never get to that level. Yeah.
That's pretty cool. And before I interviewed Len Coote and we're talking about there was this breakdown between, was it 80% teaching and 10%?
Yeah, there's a model, which is like 40% teaching, 40% research, and 20% what you might call engagement. Or
helping others.
It could be working with industry, it could be doing projects for government, it could be some sort of leadership role. But that's the model, 40-40-20.
Yeah.
40-40-20, yeah. And because nearly all of us here at UQ are teaching and research. So 40% of our time is research, 40% of our time is teaching. The other 20% is you might lead a program, you might be doing industry consultancy, you might be doing executive education, you might be doing something else for the university. So it sounds formulaic and it sounds rather strict with clear border, but it's still fairly fluid. And people can change that balance and argue, well, I'm 60% teaching and I'm 20% research and so. But we are still a research-intensive university, and if you do research and you do it well, then you are rewarded for that. And teaching, in the last, 15 years, it's become much, much more important and being a good teacher. Where before it was all about being a good researcher was first. Now there's a much better balance between the two. And the balance is even tipping a bit more now, where it's all about teaching, research, and actually showing you can work with industry. So people that I've always had that three areas I've been working with, to me it's been a great advantage, because the university's catching up to where I've always been. Which has been good. Yeah.
That's amazing.
So people see me as someone that can help them with industry collaboration and industry connections, and that's why I've done various roles like the associate dean of research and executive education, and even today I've asked to get involved in some executive education programs, which maybe I can or maybe I can't do.
Who knows? We'll find out.
Yeah, it's all about time. Yeah.
Yeah, that's cool. And just wondering, what do you think your perfect balance is? So there's the 40-40-20. If you could have it your way, 100%, what would you like it to
Well,
be?
I've just come off, I've had 6 years of 100% doing one of those, and that was really the engagement.
Oh,
So
the leadership.
when I was the Dean of Research, Associate Dean, that was 6 years of working with industry, working on the university's research committee, universities, a postgraduate committee, getting rules and policies in place, and really setting up centres, research centres, and really enabling other people, early career researchers and others, setting up grant schemes for, I guess, fostering the talent and creating that pipeline into the university. So I spent 6 years doing that. And so the balance went all that way, and I kept no teaching, but the research was there, 20% of the time. And now it's flipped back to really the 40-40-20.
Oh, okay.
Which, so that's been good. So I'm coming back now into where I guess I started back when I was 25, younger.
Yeah.
So I've got that research and teaching. So I've come back to these roles because I wanted to get the research program up and running again. But it's always been there because I've had good PhDs, I've had good junior people to work with who are passionate about what they're doing, and really they lead the programs and I just come in and join them. It's been good.
Yeah, that's pretty good.
So working in those good research teams is the way you do it. And a lot of our careers, no matter what industry is about working in parts of teams or multiple teams, and then playing a role in those teams and being a contributor. And then, adding value to those teams is very important, which I think I can do.
Yeah, that's pretty cool. Next, I want to talk about Myers-Briggs, right?
Oh, yeah.
Because, I never actually heard of like a Myers-Briggs qualification, but Victor, he had it on LinkedIn. So can you tell me like what inspired you to get into it, and how does Myers-Briggs, in your personal opinion, compare with other?
I don't want to dampen your enthusiasm, but it's a tool. So I've got a PhD in psychology and a BA honours in psychology. So that gives you training in, I guess, personality and personality traits and the proper ways to measure personality. So if you really want to measure personality properly, then you end up doing these psychometric tests that are valid and reliable. I know some of the consultancy companies do these properly, career counselling ones, and you sit there for hours doing these tests, MMPI, the 16PF and so on. But that's not always the case. If you want to really do a quick measure of what is a personality type or a personality preference that might be useful for teamwork or I guess some self-understanding, and they don't have the time to sit there for several hours and do a measure, then these are useful. So the Myers-Briggs type indicator is a valid and fairly reliable measure. It's a personality type measure. And look, some years back, which is a long time ago now, I think even to get access to the measure, you had to be accredited. And I was running workshops with leadership programs, and I'd want to run a personality measure. They were the days before you could just go online now and stick in personality. There's all sorts of measures available that some people have developed. And you really, it's either doing the valid, reliable psychological measures, which you had to be a psychologist to get access to, which I was, or you do a Myers-Briggs type indicator. And those programs, I think, are still up and running. So that was good. It's a good measure. It's a great little measure. But
is it useful? Is that did that course give you anything extra than what you could have found in the
much deeper. It gets into the Jungian psychology, Carl Jung, Jung. Jungian psychology, the philosophy behind the measure. It talks about a lot more around just not type, but also, and I think we talked a little bit about this in class, but that life is too short not to be fully developed, to be self-actualised. So it's all about developing the shadow personality. So you might be introverted, but you've got an extroverted part. And what the Myers-Briggs highlights and Jungian psychology would highlight is that why not try to spend some time developing that less developed side of who you are. So I'm an introverted, but I want to enjoy and experience what it's like to be an extroverted. And so, or I'm, I'm a thinking and feeling. So I'm a thinker, but there can be advantages to be developing my feeling side. So the shadow, as they call it. So things like that were really quite useful that I would not have heard about unless I'd done a course like that. So again, there are advantages where you can just take a measure or you can actually study and learn about the measure from professionals who use it,
Yeah.
and they can give you that more detailed, fuller understanding of why you might use the measure, when you might not use the measure, and how you can actually kind of like, it's like having a car and you add extras to it, and how you can get value out of that. And the same with the Myers-Briggs. If you do a course, and whether it be a team management index or personality measure, or it's a lot measured now on emotional intelligence is another big issue that people talk about, then by doing a course on it, if it's available, and again I'd recommend it, it does give you that added insight into other features of it, so that when you finally use it or workshop it, you can take it down another pathway, but that maybe other people can't use it for. Like I've got a friend who's a master practitioner, so it's a level above that. He's done the MBTI, and he does all this wonderful stuff with the MBTI that I could never do, even though I've done the course, because he's done a course like above that.
Oh, wow.
And we can do much better than someone below that just does an online course who just doesn't know much about it.
Yeah, which is me.
But it's one to play with. You know, I think understanding personality type is quite useful. Yeah.
Yeah, that's pretty cool.
Around careers, you know, like, you know, is my career, and again the MBTI, and we did talk a little bit about this in class. You know, there are certain types of people that are attracted to some careers more than others, but it's not saying that like 80% of engineers are INTJs.
Yeah.
You know, in fact, there's no more than probably 10 to 15%. So there is some evidence that a particular type of personality it's like what we call a job person fit. The job and the person is a better fit. And then in some other areas, and there's, you know, I was looking even today at one called the Holland, Holland, another one that looks at, you know, personality type and career choice. But look, have a play with them. They're all useful. And like in our course, we did that development plan.
Yeah, we did.
And so, you know, again, if we're talking about careers with your friends online, it's have a play with a developmental template. There are lots of them online, and it talks about your strengths and your areas for development. Then, you know, as we did, like, then what are the tools I'm going to use to close that gap around where a gap is important for maybe the sort of job I want to do, or where maybe I want to develop that shadow side. I want to actually develop more of my creativity, or develop more of my feeling skills. And so how might I do that?
Yeah, that's pretty cool. And so speaking of that, so you're saying that there are some people that are like more inclined to certain careers. And so what about yourself? Do you think like being a lecturer, was that sort of more kind of quotes like sort of almost written in your personality from a young age, or not really?
I've always wondered, I always said, as I said earlier, I thought I'd teach, So, and as it is, rather than being a high school teacher, I became a higher education teacher, which I think has been a better choice in many ways, given the fact that I've always had classes of young people and older people that want to be there. While my brother, and I talk to other teachers of high school, sometimes it's a bit of a challenge. You've got people and you hear about it in the media quite often. Kids, and it was on the media like a couple of weeks ago, students swear at you,
or throw something,
or abuse you, or throw things at you. I've never ever had that happen.
Wow, that's amazing.
In a class, thank goodness, and it would never happen at a university. But you know, I think the most ever happened was a paper aeroplane once, many years ago. That was done out of fun, more than a big class of 300, and someone decided to throw an aeroplane. And I actually made an example of him. It was very interesting, in a fun sort of way.
Yeah, good times. And are you more on the lines of like, sort of like working on your weaknesses, or honing full on your strengths?
I think I'm full on the strengths.
Really? So when you build your career, like for people there, they're thinking about what I should do.
Yeah, I think look, no one's perfect, but we all 100%. Do have some strengths. You know, and so I think identify those strengths, and those strengths can become an advantage for sure. You know, if you're very planful, or you're very conscientious, or you're very creative, whatever it might be, identify those strengths and obviously play to them, because they will become part of that brand of who you are. But then I think life is too short, and this is like later as you sort of to not develop those other sides of who you are. And again, psychology, we talk a lot about that to be more fully rounded, would it be Aristotle or Plato,
Yeah,
you know,
yeah.
having that reflective side of life and you know, taking time out to think about, well, why am I here? What am I trying to achieve?
Yeah.
Particular goals. So you develop your brand, but then, you know, and that gets you jobs and that maybe helps you with your career. But also think about that less developed side. The
Yeah.
unexamined life is not worth living, as they say.
Yeah, I love that
Aristotle,
quote.
I think.
Yeah.
So, so think about that unexamined side of life and, you know, what could that be? And I can say that as someone who I try,
Yeah.
but I don't really do that.
Yeah, it's too comfortable.
It's too comfortable, you know.
Yeah, especially
But-
when you're like pretty good at like your strengths now.
Yeah,
quite
yeah,
developed.
yeah. So my challenge is if when I finish my life as an academic, what do I then do? And you're at the stage, as many of your viewers and listeners are, as well. They're starting off their careers, so
Yeah.
yes, develop a brand and play to your strengths, but and then try to develop that other side. And I'm at a stage soon where I need to decide, well, what else would I do
Yeah.
with my last 20 years of life, and that's quite a scary transition.
That is.
You know,
Yeah.
and you know, and many academics, like many people in law and the medical profession, they really never kind of retire. You know, we have
Yeah.
academics here that retire and then become honorary
Yeah.
professor or honorary senior associate professor or adjunct, as we call it.
Yeah.
And they're not as much now, but they still come in and they sit on their typewriters and working on articles. They're not teaching, but
Yeah.
it's still a part of who they are. Or
Yeah.
or you know, you see it. People they still spend a day or two in the office, and then they're spending the other days working for a not-for-profit or playing for golf.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
getting that balance right is that's a bit scary.
Yeah, that's kind of cool. And so, what do you think for yourself that, like, I don't know, last 20 years or whatever? What do you think the ideal day in the life is? And
I have no idea. I'm very physical, as I said. So if I go back to where we started,
yeah.
as a little boy playing football and
Yeah.
climbing, it sounds like large mountains, but they're not
Yeah.
large mountains. But doing hiking and, you know, outdoor life and going to the beach and riding
Yeah.
surfboards until I was 65, still riding surfboards at Noosa and a lot of other, and doing it reasonably well.
Yeah.
I'd like to retire to that physical, like I'll go to the gym tonight, you know,
Yeah,
and,
that's good,
and,
that's
and
good.
I'm riding the bike tomorrow for 50 or 60k.
Yeah.
So I like that physical, but the challenge for me then is finding something besides the physical, you know.
Oh,
so
finding something like
that's not physical, because I can't always go for 60-kilometre rides, and I can't
Yeah.
always go to the gym four
There's
nights a
24
week.
hours.
Yeah. So what is a non-physical version of me? Is an interesting question, and I've already said to you all that, you know, I'm not. Maybe I could develop reading, and yes, I could work for a not-for-profit. Do I want to learn how to play golf? No.
Hilarious.
Because I think you need to start playing that when you're very young.
Oh, have a growth mindset, Victor.
You know, lawn bowls. I don't know whether you can pick
Yeah.
lawn. I probably want to play it with no shoes on. You know, that would be fun.
Yeah, that'd be cool.
But I have no fishing. Yeah, got to be near down the beach. I think something near the beach, but you know, I've got to work that through.
Yeah. And do you think that like research would be like an ongoing thread in your life, or is it too taxing on the brain?
Oh no, it's fun. Research is really fun, you know.
Yeah.
You know, on a couple of projects at the moment where, and as I said before, I think the real deep thinking on it, and a lot of the hard work is being done by the younger groups who work with me.
Yeah.
And we're doing another big project looking at careers in hospitality and tourism, where we've won a grant from the government. Again, it's this applied theoretical work, so practitioner work, and we'll be writing a report to the government for what's called now the National Careers Institute, which is a new part of Department of Industry, looking at, well, what can we do about actually, and with COVID it's now become a big issue, about encouraging people for a career in hospitality and a career in retail. So we're doing a study now where we're talking to Red Rooster, Bunnings.
Hilarious. Yeah.
I've just talked to a large restaurant chain here in Brisbane, gone and did 11, 12 interviews. Cotton On,
Yeah,
and,
love
and
it.
talking to people that are actually the CEOs and the owners, the senior executive, and then talking to people that actually work as cooks or as work on the front desk in a retail store.
variety.
So that work is fun to do.
Yeah.
And so we will do our government report and we'll therefore show that we've delivered what they want, and we'll make recommendations. And like last night, I was just working on another report with fine-tuning the recommendations that we'll make to government. And it's up to government whether they actually then enact or follow those through.
Yeah.
And then we take those reports and we write them up for academic papers.
Yeah.
So, you know,
Then haven't you pretty much figured out what the non-physical Victor would be doing?
I don't know.
No, isn't it? Isn't I
Well,
thought that was
is
obvious.
it? Maybe
Isn't
it's
it
still
just
sitting.
Victor?
What do you think? It's still sitting in a room writing papers.
Yeah, because you seem like you still enjoy it, and it's not like one of those things where you have forced retirement like tennis, right? When you like actually
you break down. Yeah.
Yeah, and it's something that like you still can do.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, sure.
Yeah, isn't it? Or are you like a bit sick of research at this point? Like, oh
No,
man,
not-
need something else.
Well, we just got a paper accepted last Friday. That's why I get excited about it. So, and it's excited for me in that, you know, you put a lot of work into, you know,
Yeah.
you first plan the research, you get the
Yeah.
data. You know what it's like. You plan the research, you get the
it's
data, you
tedious.
analyse the data, you write it up, you send it to a journal, which you've never been through this process.
Never.
But you've done assignments. We've all done assignments.
Yeah.
The same thing, and you get a mark. Well, in a way, you get a mark. You send it off to a journal. They do a peer review. You get 3 or 4 comments saying,
Yeah.
here's 15 pages of what's right or wrong with what you've just written.
Yeah.
And so you do a revise and resubmit. And you might go through 2 or 3 of those. So after
Yeah.
about 3 or 4 years, the idea becomes a publication.
Yeah.
And that's quite, to actually then get something accepted in a good, a high ranking journal or publication, and then get people to cite it, that
Yeah.
actually will reference your work. That gives you a buzz, and again, we got a paper accepted on Friday.
Woohoo!
Well, it's kind of, we have to do some other things to it to get it right here.
Tentative.
But it's a good journal, and
Yeah.
and we think it's a nice article. But the rest of the team are delighted. I'm happy,
Yeah.
but they're even happier than I am
Oh, that's
because
brilliant.
they're younger, and and we got another paper accepted too, where well, that was where from the PhD with. Dr. Ree Jordan. It's the first article out of a PhD that's
Yeah.
been accepted.
Yeah.
And she's delighted, and we're very happy for her, and we're on that paper as well. So it's like it's like climbing a hill, and you finally get there, and then you know you get the tick of approval, and that's nice. It's a nice achievement. So yeah, I still like doing that,
Yeah.
but the grind of I don't know. Yeah, the grind of revising and resubmitting is a bit wearing. I think it's a bit wearing, and especially when you've kind of done all that.
Yeah. It becomes the same old,
Yeah,
but
like
slightly different.
We just had something came out a couple of weeks ago, which was a national ranking in business and management, and also in psychology. And I just ranked in the world's top 100. It's incorrect. The world's top 100 in psychology. Sorry, Australia's top 100 in psychology.
Yeah.
But when you look at the number of citations, it would have put me in the top 20 or so in business and management. So that's nice, you know.
Yeah.
You know you're up there. It's like, let's just say, you've won Wimbledon once. Do you need to win it 3 times?
Yeah.
Well, people do. They want to win it several times. So
Yeah.
you know.
But it's not, it's like when you win it for the first time, it's 0 to 1, and then everything after is maybe like 1 to 1.5, 1.5 to 2. It's not, you don't get that high.
Yeah. So look, in terms of careers, it's like find something rewarding. And again, we talk a lot about people changing careers over time.
Yeah.
And there's this great resignation debate that they were talking about now. I was talking to one of our HR professors, human resource management professors, a couple of days ago, and he's been looking at data from the Australian Bureau of Statistics. Australians don't change jobs. It's about a 10% turnover rate.
Really?
And with COVID, it's going to go up a little bit, but it's not like they're talking about 30 and 40 or 50%.
Yeah, not significant.
Yeah. So you do make career changes, but the best thing is to find a profession you want to belong to, and maybe you're finding that in consulting, and work your way up and see how it goes. And as long as they give you opportunities for career development, doing interesting work, working with interesting people, interesting clients, then I think it's quite exciting.
Yeah.
and if you get paid reasonably well for it, as you do in consultancy, but you've got to put in the hours.
Unfortunately.
But the other thing too, if you work for a company with a brand name like the Big Four, and I know people that work for IBM just for 2 years, and the rest of their life they call themselves an IBMer.
Oh, that's quite nice.
And they use it as a tag for, I work for IBM, and I see it here, I see people that come to this university, I work for CSIRO, or I work for Apple.
Yeah.
They might have only been there for 2 years, and I don't know what sort of job they did, but they now use that as an edge, as a shiny badge to say, well, hire me because I've got these skills, and quite often we do hire them, and we now know why they left Apple and why they left CSIRO, because they don't really have the skills at all. Some of them are wonderful, but some of them really it's a bit short.
Yeah, it's the same with like the UQ tag, sticking it on everywhere. People judge you by that.
Use it, especially a lot of the companies like to see that badge.
Yeah.
And we've had it with executive education. We know we've had. I've sat in rooms where companies have said to us, and you look at the people around the boardroom table, UQ. They're all UQ graduates, and they say, well, why are we running these programs with those other universities?
Yeah.
We're all UQ graduates. We know how good it is. We know what UQ to offer those programs for us, and quite often it's almost a blind decision. They don't know much about our capability, but because we come from UQ, they know it must be pretty good. Yeah. Because they're UQ graduates and it's done them no harm.
Yeah.
Okay.
Good. Yeah, cool. And the final question is, Victor, what do you think the meaning of life is, in your opinion?
The meaning of life, searching for happiness. I think it's all about, it's an interesting question because, as you get older, you see people, retire and go off and do other things, and then, and unfortunately, you are forgotten very quickly.
Yeah.
So I guess the other thing is, again, the people that don't forget who you are family and friends, and making those contributions is really quite critical. And somehow getting that balance between being a contributor to your family and your friends and community and being a contributor to work. But work forgets about you fairly quickly.
Yeah, I agree.
And you see it with people changing jobs. They're no longer here, and they sort of move on very quickly. And it is quite amazing. You can have people be it in employment for a long time in certain organisations, and they're gone and they're forgotten really quickly. But you're not forgotten by your families.
Yeah.
So keep that balance.
Yeah, that's some good advice. Yeah, okay.
Thank you.
Say bye.
Well done. Thank you. Bye-bye, everyone.
Bye.